Welcome to the Dr. Joe Show, where we learn about women's health and sexual wellness. Our guest today is Casey McCollum, and Casey, Casey's a former student of mine and one of the best. And she's now living a little bit different life. So, Casey, tell us about what you're doing these days.
The last 5 years, I have been in the sunny state, as you can see, of California. I'm here in Los Angeles pursuing an acting career. It's been a fun ride so far, and yeah, that's about it. I mean, I've taken up scuba diving. I'm currently getting my pilot's license for private pilot,
Mhm.
and just trying to keep busy with all this COVID stuff.
Yeah. Well, you look the perfect part for being an actress out there. So I
Thank
I I
you.
I know
Thank
things are. I know it's a tough business though. My wife has been in the music business here in Nashville, so it's a tough. That's a tough business to break into, and the acting, I'm sure, has the same situation where you have to just go on all these different auditions, and of course, I did a little of that back in the day too, and there's just so many auditions and so few callbacks, but you just have to keep going at it, and there gets to be more and more callbacks, and you just have to. It's a perseverance situation, I'm sure.
It keeps me on my toes, that's for sure. I had done a lot of research prior to moving out and heard several now successful actors talk about, in my 200th audition, I finally booked, or it took 400. And I was so fortunate when I came to LA, I think on a Thursday night, and I got in at 10 p.m. I got my car wash the next morning at 8 o'clock, took a job at the car wash just so I could have work while I was finding an apartment. And I booked my very 2 weeks later, I booked my very first audition in LA.
Hmm.
And I was so nervous about it, right? Because now I'm in the big time. And then it turns out that the once we filmed, the director told me I had the part. I just didn't need to blow it in the audition. She knew from my photo that like this, I was going to be it. I
Right.
was the only reason I wouldn't get it. And so I got it, and it was a great experience. It's been more sparse since then, the bookings, but definitely a great way to enter into LA and to feel like I'm here and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be, and I'm already a part of the hustle and bustle.
Right. It is from the small amount that I did, it is a exciting, and it tries your patience sometimes, but it's very exciting when it happens, and of course the money is good when it happens and that type of thing. So, but again, you look the part, and I think that's, of course, and you got the, not only that, you have the energy, you have the personality, I think, for it as well. So um
Thanks. Thanks.
yeah, just my humble opinion. So, but I appreciate so much you sharing your time with us. And the Dr. Joe Show is really aimed at young women that are about the age you were when I had you in class, that 18 to 22-year-old bracket. So it's really, what ultimately the question I'm going to ask toward the end is, what would you wish that you knew, then when you're in college, compared to what the experiences you've had, and what you know now? But we'll get to that later. But what was your earlier, younger life like, when you were a sorority woman at Middle Tennessee State?
I was kind of prior to being a sorority woman, and I think throughout it, I was a little boy crazy.
Hmm.
I thought, if I met my spouse, if it was high school sweethearts, that's so romantic. But like, I'll meet my spouse in college, and and then we'll get married after, and I'll have kids. I'll start kids at 27 to 33, right? And I'll have all my kids. Well, now I'm 32 and still single. So the plan has definitely changed.
Hmm.
Um, but the landscape has in a good way. I would say that at that age, I was definitely focused on boys. I wanted to be in a relationship. I wanted to have a significant other to depend on. My father had passed when I was a freshman in college, so I had a little bit of a different outlook, I think, than the normal
Right.
college girl, where I had lost that security blanket.
Right.
Uh, but I mean, I was always what they call like a serious date, right? So I did have a college relationship for 3 years, and then realized throughout it, and this was throughout your class as well, it was more of a toxic relationship. And I decided not to get married because every time I pictured it, I could picture getting married after college and then our divorce later on. And I thought, I just can't do this for my life. I want to be married one time and that's it. Find my partner as you did. You guys have been such a shining example.
Thank you.
And that, so I've developed past that, but that's definitely what I initially in that age bracket. was very excited about. I mean, I started college dating the starting point guard. Like I always wanted a boyfriend. I
Sure.
wanted to find the cute guy, right? And so
Right.
that was my mentality.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense, and so you're probably glad you didn't make the decision to carry through with the marriage and at that point in your life and that type of thing. So, um, and did you coming through that experience? Did your attitude change post college, or what happened from there to now?
Yeah, it was pretty significant of a change. I post college, I I definitely was seeing people, but I wasn't getting the same kind of relationships, and I don't think I was meeting people in the same way where this app dating craze has taken over,
Hmm.
as opposed to meeting people in person in school or through friends.
Hmm.
That's how I had dated previously, and then ever since post college, the apps had taken over, and so it was quite a different outlook on what this new dating life is going to be with the technology advancing. So there were less deeper connections, and I struggled to find men that wanted to commit in the same way or were as interested in that.
Hmm.
So I had about 6 years. Getting out of a 3-year relationship, I had about 6 years of being single.
Hmm.
There were men that like wanted to pursue me, but my thought at that point was, I'm already off of my plan. My future husband is going to be exceptional, like the role models that I've seen and the role models the men that I know that are out there, and I'm not going to take less than that.
Hmm.
So I'd rather, and then my perspective completely changed where I said, I'd rather be single than settle and lose any more of my time.
Hmm.
And so my shift has focused to my career. And I never saw that for myself. I always saw doing what I love and pursuing what I want, that stayed the same, but being married while I was doing it or finding that partner in the beginning.
Hmm.
And I've really learned to hold my own and I found out who I am through that process. And
Hmm.
I would say I didn't quite know who I was. I thought I did, but I was very much an overachiever in school. And post college, I thought, have I peaked? Like like I haven't done significant things since then. Like I used to work for the governor and I used to be president and like of the college. And I was like,
Hmm.
what am I doing now with my life? Because I'm, booking or not booking.
Hmm.
Where am I getting my self gratification? And I had to learn that it had to come from friendships and relationships, not so much male relationships, but my female friends.
Hmm.
So definitely a different complete, I would say like a complete 180 of the perspective I used to have.
Right. I remember you well back in at school. Student body president running. I know there was an issue situation though that came up with that, but you had you had leadership all over you, and I know you were student body president at the college before that. Um, so I get exactly what you're saying as far as your life was kind of one in one direction, kind of one style, and then you get out to LA and like you said, you get to the big time, and then it didn't hasn't worked out exactly the way as far as like your relationship situation didn't work out like you envisioned it to begin with, as far as the getting married right out of college and that type of thing. But it sounds like you've done a really great job of taking the new situation and being able to be flexible enough to approach life in a different way. And it sounds like you found a lot of success as far as the way you're dealing with it now. What would
I think so.
go ahead, would that be fair?
Absolutely. I think I've learned to appreciate the journey, and I definitely needed that time and that space to understand that appreciation and how
Mhm.
precious time is and
Mhm.
how precious time is alone. So like if I have a Sunday now, all of my friends have children and can't fathom being single in their 30s, right? But I wake up on Saturday and it's just me, and I think, I should enjoy this before someday I have children and I'll never get to sleep in on a Saturday again. So
Right.
like just knowing that and appreciating, and I get to enjoy my friendships more. And I it's I'm glad that things have worked out the way they have.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm a fan of yours from afar, of course. I'm glad it's working out the way it is too, but not every young woman I don't think would have been able to handle it as well as you have. He always struck me as being very mature, for your age, and I think that just continues. But would you comment on what you think of, you mentioned them earlier, what you think of the apps like Tinder and that type of thing. The situation that's arisen, do you think it's a positive situation or negative or a mix of the two?
I can't speak to if it's positive or negative, so I guess I'll take a neutral path.
Mhm.
Um, I do, as I'm thinking that out, I do think so. In the beginning, right, you had Tinder, and that was the first one, and so everyone was on it.
Mhm.
And then very quickly, it developed into more of a like what we call a hookup app, right?
Mhm.
And so if you're interested in maybe not relationship based relations, then that's
Mhm.
where you go to. And then we had some more options develop, like Bumble or I don't know some of the other ones like Coffee Meets Bagel, and just a couple of other options. Um, and I and those I have found are a little bit less toxic. And I say toxic not because of what they are, but because of what I received from them.
Mhm.
So even through Bumble, I heard this mentality, and this is what I wasn't prepared for when I was younger. And if I could tell, you'd said, "What would you tell someone your age or back then, my age?" And it's through the dating app. I thought, "Oh, well, I'm on Bumble now. Bumble's known for the relationship. Like that means I'm finding a relationship." And then I
Mhm.
had a girlfriend tell me, "My cousin is such a horn dog. He's on Bumble. He gets all of these dates, and he's like, it's perfect. It's all these women who think I'm going to be their boyfriend." And I have sexual relations with them, and then I get to bounce, like, because they all
They're
want
set
a
up.
boyfriend. Yeah, they're set up and they're thinking that's where it's gonna go. And
Mhm.
so he gets what he wants, he leaves, and these women are left with heartbreak. And that's very similar to my experience, is that I couldn't find a man that wanted to commit in the same fashion that I did. And when I did, he wasn't the quality man that I was looking for.
Mhm.
I have developed some great friendships from those apps, but I learned then in dating, because recently had a partner for 6 months. And I say partner because I've also learned that's what a man should be in my life, a
Mhm.
partner, right?
Right.
So from that, I learned in the very beginning, I had 6 years of kind of mini abandonment issues. Like if I'm dating this guy and he doesn't want to make it official, or if this one leaves and then this one I don't care for and that's my choice, that's okay. But like other men, and if it doesn't work out, I just felt a little, they're not going to stick around for long.
Mhm.
And then my boyfriend came in and was like, I'm staying around. And I thought, wow, I didn't realize I had a little bit of like abandonment issues, because guys today just don't stay in the picture very long. And so, um, in that sense, I would say that it was toxic from my personal experience from it. And so
Mhm.
I've pulled away from those apps. I more use them as like, hey, I'm if I'm new to an area, like when I first moved to LA, I'm new to an area. I'd love to get to know some friends, and I definitely have built several friendships from that app that have been great.
Mhm.
So years later, like you realize you're not going to date and then come back and let's have a friendship because just things didn't work out. So
Right.
I view
Well,
the apps.
that makes sense. Um, do you think that that is a common, again, I wrote the book, Battles of the Sexes, and there's a lot of scientific evidence that males and females in general, not all of them. I mean, there's definitely exceptions to the rule, but when you describe that Bumble situation and the kind of the premeditated, knowing that what the women's expectations were going to be, and then what young man that you're talking about going into it, knowing that the women are set up, they have one expectation, that he has another plan. Do you think that that's generally true as far as general relationships? And again, I know there's exceptions to all these rules, but do you think that males these days, and I'm asking this question because you're a quote unquote older woman now. Never thought I'd see the day I'd call you that. um, but not too much older, that's for sure. You're
Oh, you're
you're
fine. You're
you're
fine.
definitely in your prime. But do you think for the younger women's, the college, especially girls, do you think that have you seen that in your experience, that there's a different set of, a different drive obviously going this? Would it be fair to say that the men's sex drive just for sex alone and not a relationship is higher in general? And would you say that they're opportunistic as far as you know getting, not really wanting to be in a relationship, but wanting to have the sex anyway.
I think it's a generational change. I don't I want to associate it with the apps. I think it's generational. I'm seeing high school students be praised for sexual encounters and encouraged even freshman years and younger to
Hmm.
like start beginning their sexual journey. So I think it's definitely something that's generational. I do know for the men that I've been seeing, I think that overall, right, over my dating journey, I think anyone can be opportunistic, female or men alike. And I
Hmm.
think everyone can have an equal sex drive,
Hmm.
female and male alike. I think they happen at different times. And I think that because we still have this slight stigma attached to women sexually and suppressing them a little bit sexually, then, and I say that because I think you still see it. You still see dads praising their sons, but like not condoning the girls in the same type of freedoms.
Right.
And every family, be it what it is, but just have an equal bias there on whatever, like, or I guess don't have a bias, but have an equal footing for your male and female children. But so I think women, it's tough because I know the younger generations are getting praised for it now. So
Do you think both sexes are being praised for it?
yeah, I
Okay.
wouldn't say this except I know some high school students, and it's definitely, and I hate it for them because I think that I, for me, I wanted a deeper connection with somebody. I wanted a real deep relationship and to find my person. I've always been that kind of serious date, right? But now I'm seeing these girls from a very young age that they do have that sex drive and they're not ashamed of it and they're ready to go and like live their best life minus the relationship connection. And I wonder in my head, I'm like, is this because they've had to adapt and that's not what they really want and they're just saying that because they've had to force themselves to think that because this is the culture that they have in their school?
Hmm.
Or are they actually, or do they really mean it and they're okay with this superficial just base physical encounters? And at least for the West Coast women that I've met, that seems to be the case.
The
um
second.
the second, yeah, so
So
far that's what I can see, but I think everyone's so different, right? It depends on every individual family unit and how they were raised, and it's a
right.
tough call to generalize.
Right. No, I hear what you're saying. Do you do you think that will be a positive thing for them over? Can you
It
let me
wasn't for me.
okay,
I can't speak to anybody else, but it wasn't for me.
okay, yeah.
And yeah, if I could go back and tell my younger self, I'd be like, these guys aren't worth it. Like
Right.
I've had a handful of wonderful men to look up to, and they weren't single or it didn't work out with us, but like they were exceptional quality men and they
Mhm.
are out there. And so I hold my future spouse to that standard
Yeah,
of the few that I've met, yourself included, with your
thank you.
relationship with your wife has always been beautiful. And that's what I loved and took away from your class so much was the dynamic between a man and a woman and how it could be. And I think when you get these, at least for me, the superficial relationships, it hurts in the end because when I did find a relationship, I was a little like stunted from the others where I thought, oh, this isn't going to last because he's just going to leave. And then I had to work that out on my own
Kind of shell shocked from the other ones, or
a little bit. And you don't even know, you don't even know that that's the case until all of a sudden you realize time and time again, that is the case.
desensitized would be another way, maybe, of desensitized to what your original goal was.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, it makes a lot of sense, and that's been my observation. Again, not in every case, but the general observation is, and again, the biology of it, the women, just because of ancestry and the way that things have come down to this point, it's been, there's these instincts, I think, in the two different sexes, and the way things are set up right now, it's pretty rough, I think, on women in general. And again, there's exceptions to the rule. There's men that are, you know, I mean, there's a big crossover between the two. There's no doubt about that. But
Well,
I
I
go ahead.
think we're made to be, I think we're made to be loved.
Right.
And I think that even generationally, I think that we're more sexually, what's the word? We're living in just a more sexual culture. And that doesn't mean that that's conducive to love. It's physical, but I don't know that it's the emotional and the psychological love, right? And so I think that that's what we're designed for, that greater love and that greater intention. And
Right.
when we don't get that from other relationships, that I don't know that that can be good for us. We like to think it, right? Like I'm more experienced and I'm more advanced in all areas of my life, including my sexual life. But I don't know that that's the case, because for me, still, I would rather have the deeper connection. But I know other women who would say the opposite. So
Yeah. The
interesting.
the bonding, I think, like you said, I think is so important. And my guess would be that most women would follow that pathway, even if they've been raised like you described. I think, you kind of hit on it, in my opinion, and again, from my research, generally, that there's a kind of a denial of what they, not all of them, because there's about 10 or 15% the research shows that really are okay. I mean, they've got a similar sex drive to the guys, and especially when alcohol's involved, there's a lot of sex drive going on there, and honest sex drive, not not just doing it because they want to get a relationship from it or whatever. But that leaves about 80, so somewhere around 80, I think, percent that would probably could be socialized in that direction, but there's going to be um conflict. There's going to be conflict within themselves, about their true and deepest desires, and it's kind of bulldozed out of the way to some degree, I think. Because so I think your who you are, Casey, as a person, I think, as a woman, is probably representative of a lot of women these days, as far as that deep instinct that you have, the deep desire. And again, I think it's partially social, the observations you've made socially, but I think there's also a biological stream that runs there. But that's just again, not being a woman, it's not my absolute place to make that judgment. But I think your assessment of the situation, I think, is really, really, really good for right now. So,
What
but
you said, the numbers make sense. 15 to 20% seems accurate to me versus the 80%. That seems accurate. And I think that, at least in the women that I've met, like you said, socially, my social experience, they're the ones that are more boisterous and a little bit more outgoing and verbal about their encounters. And so it seems like sometimes it can seem like it's more than 15 to 20%. But in actuality, I think those numbers are very accurate.
well, thank you. That's been my question too. See, I've got a lot of questions about all this, and actually, you're answering them all along the way.
Good.
And this is yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I depend on the young women that I've had in class before to add to what I'm trying to teach, to the younger women, and the opportunities I have to speak and that type of thing. So it's very valuable, your insights, and actually your lived experience, what you've been through. So I can only go so far with getting into the other sex's head. Um, so very valuable. Thank you. And again, it's interesting to have an LA kind of sample, so to speak, a person from LA that's kind of right in the middle of probably the most what would you say, progressive area in probably in the world, even, and at least one of them have the report you're giving right here, because I'm guessing it's very, very accurate, and I think it's accurate probably for most places in the United States, and probably a lot of places in Europe and that type of thing, and most big cities, so to speak. So,
That's
but
that's exactly what I was going to hit on. Is I can categorize that experience and that culture
mhm.
by big city life, and it doesn't matter West Coast, East Coast, North, South. It doesn't matter where you are. Any larger city will have a more advanced. I say advanced, but just a larger, a larger sexual culture.
Yeah, and more of a sexualized I guess what would it be, character to it than the less sexualized, and probably college campuses would probably fit into that these days as well, and as you said, high schools even. So do you think, as far as the sexualized message, as far as kind of the encouragement to it that you've spoken of in the high schools, etc., do you think that there's, and looking back on college, do you think the authorities, in college, are kind of giving that message, or do you read it differently?
I don't think I'm getting it from the authorities in school. I don't, because my cousin is a teacher, and so
Mm.
she had mentioned they're like seventh, eighth grade being like pushed to do sexual things with each other. Like they're encouraging each other to do that. Where before you'd be condoned for it if you're female.
Mhm.
Now you're like shamed if you're not doing sexual things. And so she
Amongst
said that
themselves. Okay.
amongst themselves.
Yeah.
But as an educator level, that's nothing that she's encouraged. And I have never met a teacher that encourages any bit of that. So I think it's coming from a lot of things. If I really had to pinpoint it, I think it's mostly media. I
Mhm.
think it's the TV shows that we're watching, things that even when I was a kid, 20 years ago, would never be allowed to be on cable or right in front of our faces now. And children can watch it, easily accessible. And it's at almost every show. So, as far as like showing, maybe female in a nude form and different things. So, I think that it's kind of pushed on them from a very young age from the TV that they're watching. They're watching more TV than we ever have before. From the idols that they currently have. I don't know that we currently have wholesome idols or role models for the children to look up to.
Mhm.
So it's just different. It's
Yeah.
different in that facet.
I would totally agree. Yeah. And you're in a prime spot, although it would be a real difficult task, but if there could be more of those role models and more of that wholesome message brought out of Hollywood. Of course, there's a lot of other places, a lot of other media types these days, but the more of that, I personally, I would love to see more of that, and at least have that alternative, have an alternative for parents that might be concerned, teachers, like you were describing, they are probably pretty concerned seeing the situation with middle schoolers and that type of thing. So I think there's a market for it personally, but it's a tough situation right now at this particular moment in time that we are, in history and the situation. So,
I
um,
think it's being, Coach, I think it's being, or Dr. Joe, excuse me, I think it's being catered to. I think that there is a market. I think when you see like shows like Graceland on Netflix or Heartland, like I know that my grandparents are watching these shows. I try and watch, being in the industry, I try and watch a little bit of everything that's out there. So if I
mhm,
get an audition for something, I know what that show's already about. I don't have to waste my time with research. So the content that's out there, I do think there is a market. I think it is being catered to, and I think it's there. But what we're not seeing necessarily is the parental controls to limit the children to viewing only the wholesome content. And by
right,
wholesome, I'm saying non-sexualized content.
right,
Um, and they're not, where children can now see things at 4 or 5. They're watching Netflix, right? Because of the lack of the parental controls on it, they not from Netflix, but from the parents controlling what the children are watching, the lack of that. I know they've got the controls, but the parents sometimes don't limit what they're watching even in front of their own children. That's what I'm seeing. So
mhm,
I think that's to speak to the parenting style,
right,
and maybe the lack of engagement.
right. Yeah, that's changed over the years as well. So it's a it's a situation that is ripe to have solutions put to it. And I agree. Heartland and the others that you named, we've watched. I think almost every, if not every, Heartland. Because it is kind of few and far between as far as those kind of shows as well that we found at least. So, but unfortunately, we're running out of time here. But I think there's so much wisdom you've shared already. But what would you say? Getting to that question, what would be the key things or thing that you would say to college women as far as what they should know that you know now?
I think looking back, I try not to let certain events affect me. There definitely have been hurtful events in my life, like drinking and then maybe regretting things the next morning. So it's interesting because two people make bad decisions. It's not necessarily that it's just one person or the other, right? But when I think about my overall journey, I would say one, be yourself and know yourself. And you can only do that when you're single. Um, because you're blending with somebody else, and when you're together with somebody else, you're not you figuring out you, and it's okay to do that. It's okay to take that time, and I would encourage you to take that time. So that would be that. And then secondly, if you know that you're not interested in a guy, then you don't need to waste your time dating him, um, because that's how things happen, right? Is like you have this familiarity with somebody, you don't really care for them, you don't quite want to be alone, but and then when alcohol or things get involved, maybe things progress that you never intended to get there. And it's because you had opened yourself up to the possibility of that person when really they weren't ever a possibility.
Mhm.
I don't know if I said that how I should, but
No, I completely get what you're saying.
yeah.
And I'm sure our audience does too.
Yeah. Well, but that's just it. Is even into adulthood, I think back to those particular, like, there's two instances in my life where I was like, that never should have happened. And for both people are to blame for what happened, but I'm the one who has to carry the damage of that,
Mhm.
not them,
Right.
because I was the one that was never interested. So I would encourage them to, and as always, I think it's very important to stay with your friend groups at night. I think it's important to, um, I don't know, just to protect yourself overall. I think it's
Right.
very important.
Yeah, because starting late high school, I'd say that that what you're talking about is becomes an issue as far as, especially again, females being in more danger from assaults and all that type of thing, and also just damage that a relationship can where a relationship, the female isn't taking it seriously, but there's always a willing partner on the other side if the opportunity arises, and like you said, alcohol, huge part of it. Go ahead.
I think the numbers are there, right? So I think that for me, my two instances were definitely from people that I knew intimately, like I knew them. So for girls, just need to know that, right? They need to know that that type of damage that can be caused psychologically, emotionally, all of that comes from people that you know typically. And then that still it holds true. One out of every four women are sexually assaulted before 18. Even my father, way back when, had an experience in his younger high school years, where this, there's three males, my dad included, and a female that got left in class, and everybody left class. The teacher left class, all the other students, and these two other boys were starting to sexually harass this girl that was left in the classroom. My dad had been on his way out and saw it and stopped, and she'd asked him to help. So, like, even back then, that was the case. And I think it's important for us to know it's not just post high school. I knew women that told me in high school that they were being assaulted from their uncle, like from people that they knew. So it's very important for them. One, that I had a very protective father, so my instances weren't until post college. But I think that it's very important that they protect themselves throughout, and that the parents are always involved in telling them those difficult conversations that my dad did, like, don't be alone in a classroom with a boy, regardless of if it's college or um, or library or dorm, whatever that looks like, whether it's college or high school. Like, don't always be mindful and ready, because the people who would take advantage of that definitely are.
Right. What would you say? Because we got coming up on time here. What would you say the most fulfilling thing you've learned, or done in your life has been?
The most fulfilling thing I've done, played with my niece.
See, and that's what you said earlier. Enjoy the moment and the simple life. What a great testament that is. Any final thoughts? Is anything I didn't ask that I should have?
I think you've asked all the right and amazing questions. I think that there is definitely, like, overall thing that I would say is you only can have so much, right, that you have room to hold in your hand. Like,
Hmm.
whether it's tangible, intangible, traveling experiences, relationship with a boyfriend, relationships with your family, like, there's only so much you can hold. And
Hmm.
if you're holding on to something toxic, that means you don't have room to grab onto something that could be better for you. And just
Right.
know you only have what your basket has, and you get to choose what's in your basket. And
Yeah.
we only get this one precious life. So
Right.
that would be my parting, uh, Dr. Jody. It's been an amazing interview. I've loved the questions and getting to share with you post college.
Well, the
Did I
gratitude is
be
all
okay?
mine, and I've loved it as I've loved it as well. So, um, thank you so much, and let's stay in touch. And
Yes, absolutely.
all right, Casey, take care, and thank you again so much. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.